program. I'm Elder Drexel Green Brown, and welcome to our annual Women's Conference. Our theme is We Are Women with Great Courage and Resilience. Today I'm going to be discussing Rahab, who was a harlot in the Bible. We're also going to be talking about her genealogy, how she is connected to Ruth. I read a book. It's called The Crimson Cord. It's by Jill Eileen Smith. And I'm just going to do a summary of what the author was talking about Rahab. Now, I would love to encourage each and every person to please get this book and read it. This story is so compelling. It's heart-wrenching, but we thank God that God is a healer, that God can take any situation and turn it around just like he did for Rahab. Now, Rahab, she was a beautiful woman. And in those days, the fathers betrothed their daughters to whom they wanted them to marry. And so he chose a man named Gamal, who was in the army at that time, who was supposed to have been a good report. So he chose Gamal for his daughter, Rahab. But Gamal was a womanizer, and he had a very bad temper. And so Rahab was often abused because Gamal wanted to stay in the gambling houses, gambling away their fortune. But Rahab was a smart woman. She hid their silver and little precious items in the floorboards away from her husbands. In other words, like the Bible tells you, don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. So she kept something on hand. This woman was so afraid of her husband because he would often mentally and physically abuse her. He always put her down, told her she was nothing, that he was above her. And if she didn't do what he desired for her to do, he would slap her, he would beat her. And she had sisters that knew about what he was doing to her. But she would always make excuses for him because that was her husband. And she loved him. And she just wanted to do everything to please him, but nothing she did could please that man. So we come to another character. His name is Dabir in this story, and he is another unsavory character who visits Rahab. And he says all the right things to her, and he makes her feel like the woman that she desires to feel like, and he woos her. But then she starts to feel guilty after he has wooed her and after they have had relations together. He gives her this fine scarf to have for herself, but it's all a ploy. It's all a ploy because he wants to get Gamal away from him because Gamal owes the prince Nahid a debt. So it's all a devious plot from him to get Gamal put into the prison house or sold into slavery. That's what they did back in those days. If you couldn't repay your debt, they sold you into slavery. And so that didn't work with him at first. Prince Nahid was merciful to him. He forgave his debt. And Gamal was not Dabir was not happy about that. But Gamal, being the greedy, selfish man that he was, he didn't take the gift that Prince Nahid gave him. So you know what he did? He went to the Nubian in this story. His name is Tendaji. And Tendaji owed him some money. And instead of him showing Tendaji the same mercy that was shown to him by Prince Nahid, he did not do that. He beat the man up, took him to the prison house to have him imprisoned so he could collect his debt. Oh, what did he do that for? Boy, that just amped up the thing for Dabir. Dabir got a hold of it. And Rahab, being the woman that she was was willing to sell the things that she had hidden in her floorboards to get Tendaji out of there. She knew that this would not have gone well with the prince, because in those days, if you owed a debt, you couldn't repay it. Everyone in the family got sold. It would have been your wife, your husband, your children. Everybody got sold into slavery until that debt was repaid. And she knew this was going to happen once Prince Nahid had learned of his deception and how he did not show any forgiveness to Tendaji. And so this was Dabir's way of getting what he wanted. But Dabir wasn't the one that turned him in. It was her sister's husband, Tazda. He turned him in because he was angry with him for how he was treating Rahab and what he had done. So he went and he had him turned in. And boy, that was just what Dabir needed. That was his ticket. So they woke them all back before the prince. And Dabir was like his right-hand man. And he told him, well, let's just sell him into slavery. And back in those days, if they sold him into slavery, he would be tortured. And he didn't care, because he said, well, just put Rahab up on the block, but I'm gonna buy her, but just make it look like she's gonna be sold. And in those days, when they put women up on the block or something, they barely had any clothing on. They would have something shielded so they could see their womanly features. They didn't hide anything when they were being sold. But Rahab was allowed to keep some of her innocence at that time. But Dabir did purchase her. And his plan was to make her believe that he was all about her, in which he was not. He was not about her. He treated her good, put her in a fine house and everything. She had delicacies to eat. She could bathe. She had bathed in perfumes and everything to keep herself, clean and smelling good. And then Prince Nahid, it was this celebration that was coming up. And it was almost like a mock play that they were doing. And during this time, they would get virgins to come in, and he would act like he's going to marry the virgin in order for him to have relations with the virgins. But Prince Nahid never did that, because his mother was a slave, and that's what shocked me. So he had told Rahab that he don't sleep with the virgins. Rahab took the place of her sister Adara, because Adara was a virgin. And this is how crooked Dabir was. He was going to offer the prince her sister, and she didn't want her sister to be touched. See, Dabir's plan was to have her sleep with anyone and everyone that she could sleep with, and that's exactly what happened. He is the one that forced her into a life of being a harlot, because she had no choice because of what her husband Gamal had done. So she had to pay the debt. It wasn't just her. It was her whole entire family. Her father, mother, the brothers, the sister, everybody had to repay the debt back that Gamal had incurred. And so she was forced to sleep with man after man after man. And the sad part about this story is that at some point she became pregnant. And she wanted to keep her baby just to have somebody to love her. And the Nubian prince, he tried to help her. Tendaji tried to help her escape. But of course, Gamal and his men caught up with him. And he punished her severely. He beat the crap out of her in this book. And poor Tendaji, well, he became a eunuch because he cut off his private parts. So that's how he was punished. And so Tendaji became very angry and very resentful, and he really wanted to do something to get back at Gamal. And he was a little upset with Rahab too, but he cared enough about her to be her protector. This man was so unscrupulous. And then it just happened that one day that the two spies happened to come along, which was Salmon and Monsieur or Michael, they want to call him, came along to spy out the land. And of course, some of the men, they were acting like they were just traveling through, trying to purchase a few things. And of course, some of the vendors was telling them, well, if you want to find lodging, you can go to the haunted house, Rahab's house. And boy, Salmon was not happy about that. Like, I'm not trying to get caught up like my friend did. I don't want no parts of that. But they did wind up going to her house because they wanted to find out about Jericho and his people. And so they wound up at his house, and Salmon was like, she's a harlot, because he was so judgmental of her, and he was operating in a spirit of pride. Well, all the time God was preparing her and her family for what he wanted to do. And so, of course, the bear and the prince got word of her having these two men at the house, and they brought the king's men, and that bear came there, and she took them upstairs on the roof of her house, and she hid them in some flax. And of course, she went down there and she convinced them, oh no, yeah, they was here, but they left it. They're no longer here. I don't know which direction that they went in. And so when she went back upstairs to return, they were scared, like, oh, she don't give us up. You can't trust a harlot. But she went upstairs and she began to talk with these men and to bargain with them and to ask them, I've heard about your God, Israel. I've heard what he's done with kings. I've heard how he's destroyed other lands. I heard how he parted the Red Sea. Your God is strong. You see, because their God was a moon god called Jericho. And that's who she was praying to. But then she began to realize just how powerful the God of Israel was. And she made these two men promise to save her family. And the way that she helped them escape, she gave them a crimson cord. She tied the cord so they could escape out the window along the walls. And they went back to Joshua, and they reported their findings. And of course, everybody in the land was scared because they knew what was happening. And Dabir tried to force Rahab to come and go live with him. And at this point, that's when Tendaji really got him. He just squeezed the life out of that man in front of Rahab. And then they took him because they had this, like, well, everybody else is scared. We'll make it look like he committed suicide. Took the man, took him to the window, and pushed him out the window like he jumped to his death. And as the story goes in the Bible, they marched around the city of Jericho for 7 days. Mm-hmm. And 7 days the ark went before them. And they marched around that city. And on the last day, the final day, they began to give a loud shout. And they screamed to the top of their lungs. And the walls of Jericho came down. All except for Rahab's house, her house remained. They went through the city. They killed every man, woman, boy, child, all the animals, because God told them, I don't want you bringing nothing up out of that city. Don't you touch the gold, the silver, and all of that. That belongs to me. Everything else, I want you to wipe them out. But, of course, naturally, we had one who was defiant, and he took some of the things with him into the camp. And this is how Rahab, she was trying to figure out how this God works. Because this particular family was destroyed, the whole entire family. Because Salmon and Michael had went into war against the Amorite, and they lost. Some of their men got killed. They couldn't understand, well, wait a minute, God is supposed to be with us. Well, God punished them for their sin because of one person being greedy, taking things he should not have brought into the camp when God specifically said not to do it. And he did it anyway. So she watched as this whole family was stoned to death. They took everything, all their possessions, everything, put them all, and they stoned them to death. And she couldn't understand. She went, how is it that this is a God that shows mercy to some, but not mercy to others? It was because of the disobedience that brought down that judgment against the tribe of Israel. And once they took care of that family, when they went back to war again, they were successful this time. But Solomon was hurting because of the loss of his friend. And he still couldn't figure out Rahab, he still couldn't figure her out. And she was still trying to figure out this God, but she knew she wanted what this God had to offer. She wanted it. And that's why she asked Joshua to protect her, because she didn't want other men bothering her anymore. After everything that she had been through, she didn't want men bothering her. And she made friends with his wife. But of course, all the other women in there, look at her, giving her strange looks and everything else. But eventually, she accepted the customs, because back in those days, in order for you to become an Israelite, she had to shave her hair off. All of her hair had to be shaved off. And she didn't understand that custom either when they made sacrifices, because back then animal blood was required to cover that sin. And she didn't understand that because they kept sheep and they kept goats, but these animals had to be without a spot, without a blemish, you just couldn't bring any old thing in before God. And even after they did this ritual, she still felt unclean. She still felt unworthy because of the life that she lived. She still felt like, how can anybody love me? Because I was a harlot. Because man after man has been with me. Solomon can't stand me. But they had this mutual attraction for each other. Both of them, from the moment she saw him, from the moment he saw her, they had an instant attraction for each other. But he couldn't get past the fact that she had been with so many men. But in the end, eventually, after she went through all the customs, and Solomon came back after going on a journey to find out if Gamal was still alive, because she was like, how am I going to marry you? And I don't even know if my husband did, or if I'm still married. Does your God permit that? And I'm still married? Well, he went, he got his answer. He came back, his heart had changed, and he and Rahab got married. And guess what? God made her virgin all over again. Because on the night when they sleep, and on that sheet, that first spot of blood, they take the sheet and they give it to the elder, which was Joshua. And Joshua blessed that union. She was just amazed. God turned her back into a virgin, and they conceived Boaz. Now let me tell you about how Ruth comes into play. Solomon married Rahab. The result of that was Boaz. Boaz married Ruth, who was a Moabitess. And they had Obed. They had Jesse. Jesse had King David. And we know Jesus came from the line of David. And that's how those two got connected. And if you look at your family tree here that I gave you here, it shows you just how they are connected with one another. Amen. And that is the conclusion of my presentation.
Amen. Amen.